Hello, everyone who has joined us today. I'm Olga. This is Ukraine Media Center, and we will have our traditional briefing right now about the events on the front lines and the events in the defense field. We will start with Hanna Maliar, Deputy Defense Minister. I'm glad to greet you again. So you're probably noticing that I'm coming with lots of papers each time. We are doing our best to inform about the work of the military in as much detail as possible. So we will have a representative of the armed forces after me, and you will hear the detailed information on the front lines. Today is the 99th day of this great liberation war, or at least the part of it that has started on February 24th, because we have this war since 2014. We have heroes among our militaries, we have hero cities, and after the completion of these 100 days that we will celebrate tomorrow, we can also call ourselves as the hero nation. We have survived the atrocities that no one in Europe has seen for quite a long time. So it's been 100 days since everyone has learned what Russia truly is. They have the most modern missiles, but they are simply plundering and stealing from people's hopes. They have geopolitics, but they are not taking care about the dead bodies of their troops here in from Lviv to Kharkiv. And actually, all the world is joining us in this fight. Over this 100 days, we have made a considerable step in the establishment of our nation. Unfortunately, we do not know the final date of this war. Unfortunately, we will not be able to say that we are one day closer to the end, like the draft military are saying. So this is a military calendar, and over this 99 days, we can make some conclusions already, and these conclusions will be made by many people tomorrow, so this is a symbolic number, and we can say that the key target of the Russian Federation is the destruction of the Ukrainian nation. The Russian Federation is not ready to step back. It is getting ready for a long-term war. Russia is losing not only its people, which it doesn't really care about, but also it's losing its weapons and military equipments. Right now, they are already used to use lots of old equipment and also to strengthen their production capacities. They are right now already doing this with short guns and some of the military equipment. We are noticing more frequent missile attacks over the last weeks in the west, in the east and the south of Ukraine, but in other regions of Ukraine, Russian missiles are also seen these days. The training that is happening in Belarus and Also, the war in fire in Chernihiv and Sumy region, and the situation in the Transnistrian region of Moldova, where Russia has its own controlled troops as well. Most probably, these are the pieces of the puzzle of some bigger picture the Russian Federation has in mind, and the intention is probably to prevent Ukrainians from the possibility to regroup. The Russian Federation does not have any considerable results of their offense. They are basically using the Syrian scenario. They are destroying our communities altogether. Now some traditional information that we are providing on a regular basis about the activity of the Ministry of Defense. Let us start with some international news. Yesterday, there were lots of positive news updates. There was a new package of support for Ukraine announced for $700 million, and Joe Biden has emphasized that Maliar systems will be included. And Ukraine has spoken on many occasions about the necessity of these systems for us, and right now Ukraine has some steps forward in this regard. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the Minister of Defense, Oleksiy, were speaking about this since late March. We are grateful to the United States and the support they are providing to Ukraine is very valuable. As usual, we are not unveiling the details about the weapons and equipment provided from the US, just as from the UK and Poland, which are also supportive as well, and the partners in Germany as well. The Ministry of Defense believes that the best comments about the weapons and equipments are coming from the battlefield, from our military who are using the equipment. Some info about the work we have completed in May. The Minister of Defense took part in 30 international events. For instance, the second meeting in the Rammstein format, there were some applications taken by the parties, and also on Sunday, the minister spoke to the Parliament Assembly of NATO, and also this week there were discussions with representatives of 10 countries. So these are the outcomes of successful work, which is led by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Speaking about the weekly updates about the provisions for the military. So over the last week, the Ministry of Defense has delivered for the needs of the armed forces over 26,000 armed vests, 20,000 helmets, 20,000 pairs of shoes, and also a similar number of the military kits. So by the late April, we had 50% of armed vests delivered by volunteers and international support. Right now in May, we can see that 65% of the protective vests are delivered by the Ministry of Defense. We still are closely working with charitable foundations and international organizations. Speaking of the financial part, speaking of the finance provided by the Ministry of Defense, actually the military themselves are getting the money through their military unit. Over the last 5 months, the financial provisions for the military amounted to 232 billion hryvnias, which is 3.8 times more than in the entire previous years. The expenses for military equipment were 5.6 times higher than was originally intended for the 2022 budget. This is the price of war. Also, for the repairs of the equipment, we have provided 15.8 billion hryvnias. In the ministry, there is quite a strict system of control for the defense spending, because we understand that the government is providing considerable funding, and there should be as transparent and effective use of this money as possible. Also, today we have news updates from the legal standpoint. Our legal service is effectively protecting the interests of the government in the international courts, and we already have the first instance decision about bringing back 2,500 hectares of land to the Ministry of Defense. The land that was taken over illegally. So this is the outcome of the 3 court rulings in Odessa Regional Court. Also, 1,000 square meters of property were brought back, and this is done by the Western court that has resumed the rights of property of the Ministry of Defense. Also, in the first instance, we got the decision for 6.8 million hryvnias of fines to be collected by the Ministry of Defense for not following the contract conditions by the contractors. And again, if these decisions come in force, this money will become available to the government budget. Now, speaking of the costs, the ungrounded costs for the use of gas, 30 million hryvnias. Actually, the money has been brought back. The decision has came into force, and this was a decision made in May, on the 18th of May. Also, we have stopped the attempt to transfer from government property for these are the lands in Odessa. So these are 4.3 hectares on the Artilleryski lane. So it's quite a lengthy story, but quite notable as well. So people were brought in to perform the works. They have signed shell agreements, received loans, and then faked a bankruptcy. And the idea was to get not only the property, not only the premises, but also the land, over 4 hectares in Odessa, which was quite valuable. So again, the Ministry of Defense managed to stop this attempt, and this is a court ruling of May 26. And another good updates block is coming from the healthcare department of our work. So because of the high losses of blood, people with heart injuries usually have a lethality up to 90%. There is a very high likelihood of losing one's life in such a case. But our healthcare professionals are working hard to save people, and in one of the field hospitals, it was possible to save a person with a penetrating wound of hearts. And so the military surgeons and anesthesiologists were able to save the person's life. Right now, the person is in the rehabilitation, and he only has a little scar on his chest and a little piece of iron that is in fact the bullet that was inside of him. Thank you. And we are inviting General Oleksiy Hromov, deputy head of the head operative department of the general staff. You will be able to ask your questions after all the presentations. Hello. Today, my purpose is to present the current situation on the battlefields in our country and also share some views of the general staff. The enemy continues full-scale aggression against our country. The main purpose is, as before, to have full control over Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Right now in Kharkiv axis, the main effort of the enemy is intended to hold their current positions and to hold our troops from advancing to the Russian border. The enemy is using fire, the multi-launch rocket systems, especially in Sirkony, Pitomnik, Перемога, and Prudyanka, Russky Tishki, Stary Salkiv districts. The enemy is also using artillery against our troops, attempting once again to improve its tactical positions, but in vain. In the Slavyansk axis, the main effort of the enemy is to hold the positions, to do the reconnaissance, and also affecting our troops by fire. The artillery shelling was happening in Vernopilya, Kurulka, Dovhenka, and Dolina. In Donetsk operational region, the enemy has also attacked the position of our troops along the contact line. It's using the MLRS, it's using mortars, it's intending to destroy our fortifications. The main efforts are in Liman, Severodonetsk, and Bakhmut axis. And a few words about the situation there. In Liman, specifically in Svetohirsk, Shurovo, Stary Karavan, and Raigrad, the attacks were happening. In Alexandrovka, Studinok, Alexandrovka, Sosnovo, and Novoselivka, Yerovaz, the preparations are made for the advance on Svetohirsk. In the Severodonetsk axis, the enemy is using all kinds of weapons and equipment, including aviation. The main battles are happening in Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, especially serious fights in Severodonetsk and in the axis of Skolonivka, Borivske. In Bakhmut, with the purpose to push our forces out. Again, the enemy is using all kinds of weapons and equipment. Missiles are used against Kamyshovacha, Zolote, Bilogorivka, Volodymyrovka, Pokrovsky, and Solidar. The enemy, using the effects of this fire, tries to get full control of Kamyshovacha. And also, in order to improve its position, The enemy is making yet another attack on Mykolaiivka and Vrubivka. Also, Vasilievka, Berestove, and Nasilivka, Belohorivka. The combat operations continue. In Adievka, Novopavlovsky, and Zaporizhia, the enemy is not active, but still mortars and artillery are used against our troops. In Mykolaiv, there are no active combat operations, but the enemy is taking effort to hold the control of Kherson region. They are using engineering equipment and making sure it provides supplies for its troops. Also, bridges were exploded in Davydiv Brid at Velika Alexandrivka. The enemy is defending near Davydiv Brid and Andriivka. It is using electronic warfare tools and is improving engineering conditions of its conditions. It looks like in the future the enemy intends to hold these positions and to hold our troops there. In Volyn and Padilla, there are no signs of preparations of the enemy for the attack. The main efforts of forces in Belarus are right now concentrated on collecting intelligence. Also, some mining of bridges and roads is happening along the Ukrainian border in the northwestern part of it, near the Brest Oblast. There is still a threat of missile attacks from the Belarus territory. In Siversky axis, the enemy is not active in combat operations. There are no signs of preparations of troops, but in Bryansk and Kursk regions, the troops are kept most probably to keep our troops busy. Also, in Chernihiv and Sumy, there are shellings of borderline communities. There are risks of attacks on infrastructure objects in the future in order to hold our troops there and also to instill fear. There are no signs of offense of the Russian Federation in the Bessarabia region. In the Black Sea area, the enemy continues to take action to block navigation. And right now there are 2 carriers of high precision missiles, 16 missiles in total are kept active. Since May 26, the enemy has conducted 59 missile attacks and 36 aircraft attacks, mainly against the transport infrastructure, such as railway. Since the beginning of this war, the enemy conducted 5,722 air raids and over 500 Iskander and Caliber missile attacks. From the Belarus only, there were 1,200 aircraft attacks and also 61 Iskander missile attacks intended against the critical infrastructure of Ukraine. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, the strategic purpose of the President of the Russian Federation is still the same: to destroy Ukraine as a nation. The Russian Federation intends to concentrate efforts in the east and south of Ukraine and also checking the readiness of Belarusian troops and also stirring up the situation in Transnistria region. These are the elements of the enemy intentions that basically consists in holding our troops from regrouping. And also in parallel, the enemy will be taking actions to destabilize the socio-economical and political situation in Ukraine. Based on this situation that is observed, in the nearest time, the priorities for the enemy will be intensifying the use of aviation and also missile attacks on the positions of our troops and also the civilian and logistical targets all around Ukraine. The continuation of the total destruction of civilian infrastructure and civilian population. This is the Syrian experience, as I have pointed out already. In the future, also encircling the united forces and creating the access to the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula and also in the future access to the territory of Moldova, thus blocking Ukrainian access to the seas and also destroying the Ukrainian military arsenals and also blocking the provisions of military equipment and ammunition from our allies. So, in summary, despite the strong efforts of the enemy, they are not able to accomplish the goals they have declared, but it's not the time to rest on the laurels. We are doing everything possible to hold the enemy. We will prevail. Thank you. And now Oleksiy Nadtochy from the Operations Department of the National Guard of Ukraine. Hello, everyone who is here. I would like to briefly report on the role and mission of the National Guard of Ukraine that is also implementing military tasks together with the armed forces of Ukraine when protecting our countries. We continue defense operations in Slobozhansky, Donetsky, Pevdenobuzhsky and Bessarabsky operational regions, including the deblocking of Kharkiv and also holding the enemy in Debrivka, Popasna, Kamyshovacha, Liman, Horodok, Poltivka, Severodonetsk, Bobrova, Ustinivka. The main efforts are intended to stop the enemy from moving in Bereslav, Kryvyi Rih, Bereslav, Zaporizhia axis to protect critical infrastructure objects and also the grouping of forces that are defending Kyiv are continuing the implementation of their tasks. Also, we are protecting the border with the Republic of Belarus, and we also continue stabilizational operations and implementing the tasks of territorial defense. The main tasks of those in the northern region to continue holding the borders, the checkpoints, protecting the specially defined assets of infrastructure, the borders over Dnieper and also some international institutions' office. In the east, the main efforts are to defend Kharkiv, Slavyansk, and Krasnopilya, to hold the enemy in Dovhenka, Debrivne, and protect some important government facilities by means of checkpoints. In the central unit, we are taking measures by means of checkpoints and also protecting critical infrastructure and the important government facilities such as hospitals, humanitarian aid hubs, and also the fuel for the transportation. The southern territorial unit is protecting some important government units for healthcare institutions, 3 ports, the dam, and also is taking care for the defense of the sea border. Also is ensuring the observance of the curfew hours in southern Ukrainian cities. And in the western region, some consular and diplomatic institutions are being defended, and also the support of the reserves of the National Guard in the readiness condition. Also, some air reconnaissance and the intelligence department has discovered over 1,500 different targets of the enemy, including 762 UAVs and also 190 electronic units of warfare. The total area that has been surveyed over the entire time of work was 82 hectares, and also the rivers of Dnieper near the city of Vyshgorod in total, over 23 kilometers of the rivers, mainly Irpin and Dnipro. And also we continue to guard the facilities defined by the Cabinet of Ministers. Some measures are taken to find the sabotage groups, and also provisions are made for implementation of the activities imposed by legislations in order to ensure rights and freedoms of the citizens on a daily basis. For this purpose, we are using 6,000 service people and 80 vehicles. 1,100 of people were apprehended with suspicions for sabotage activities. And since the very beginning of this aggression, over 300 people were suspected for participation in sabotage groups. And also a number of ammunition pieces and narcotic drugs were also apprehended over the last 20 days. Also, some support is provided during the transportation of humanitarian supplies, and also the reserves are being resupplied in terms of human resources. And some additional interesting information for you. Since the very beginning, we have destroyed 17 air targets, including 2 aircrafts, included 8 helicopters, 3 UAVs, one of which was downed by the drafted service people, and they were using just regular small arms. And thank you for your attention. So I would ask our speakers to come back for a series of questions and answers. Yes, dear colleagues. Oleksiy, the question is to you. I am Volodymyr Runets, ICTV Fakty Tyżnia program. We have the information that seems contradictory. On the one hand, we hear from Sergei Haidai that 80% of Severodonetsk is not controlled by Ukrainian forces, but yesterday Mariana Bezukhla wrote on her Facebook page that this information was incorrect. Can you share about the actual percentage of the city controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces, and how important is this to hold the city, and what equipment and in which ways the enemy is trying to get the city, and what is the potential danger if the enemy succeeds? Speaking of the importance or unimportance of Ukrainian cities in terms of defense, and well, actually currently in Severodonetsk there are serious street fights happening, and we cannot say that 80 or 60% are controlled by the enemy, because by the end of yesterday we had a situation that's different from today's, and the current situation is better than yesterday's. Indeed, the situation is tense. Indeed, the battles are going on. Speaking of our troops being retracted from there, it's not happening now. All the troops, all the Ukrainian troops available there will be used for the implementation of their current tasks. I will not share any details about the additional troops so that the enemy does not take advantage of this information, but I will re-emphasize once again that Ukraine's armed forces are doing their best to keep the territory under our control, and also to bring back the territories that were temporarily occupied by the enemy, especially in some access on the northern and southern areas. What is the danger? Okay, yes, there is a danger. You're right. In case Severodonetsk is seized, we will have to defend the bank of the river, and we would also have to use urban battles. There are such threats. There are threats in every case, both tactical and operative level. Right now, the situation is dangerous, but still under control.
From Greek television, a question for Mrs. Hanna Maliar. Okay. It is announced that there is a German-Greek agreement for transferring some armored vehicles BMP-1 from Greece to Ukraine. Do you believe that these vehicles cover some needs of Ukrainian forces, and also do Ukrainian soldiers know how to use them? Thank you.
The decision was made by us not to comment on the details of the weapons provided, the numbers, the parties providing the weapons, because the enemy is using this equipment. And in the very beginning of this full-scale invasion, we had cases of contracts being disrupted because of this. So right now we can only discuss the fact that the issue of international support in terms of weapons is becoming increasingly active. As for the training for our troops, if our military are not available or did not have experience before, the training is being provided. We cannot share any more information for security reasons. Thank you. Hello, Max Gunder, Reuters agency. Did Ukraine make any promises to Western partners not to use the weapons against targets in the territory of the Russian Federation? The question to Hanna Maliar. Ukraine is defending itself in this war. This is what we are always emphasizing. Hello, I'm Vitaly Tkachuk from Ukraine Forum. I have two questions. The first one is about the defenders of Mariupol. What is happening to them right now? Do we have any possibility to hear from them or from the Russians temporarily holding them? Also, we have heard yesterday that 20 communities were liberated in Kherson region. Another first question is probably yours, and the second is to Brigade General. Speaking of Mariupol defenders and Azovstal defenders, the negotiations are still going on, and this is one of those issues that we are not commenting on yet. This is a sensitive information, and currently there are negotiations. That's what I can share here. And speaking of the advance on the Kherson region, yes, indeed we are active in that axis, and indeed we did not hear in that message about the exact timing of the liberation of those 20 communities. So I cannot comment now whether they were liberated over the last week or the last month, but indeed we are active there. Viktor Melnikov, CGTN. That's a question to everyone. Can we consider that this response by Hanna Maliar about this decision not to comment on weapons being provided, specifically about the American long-range artillery? Does it mean that any decision has been made? And also there is the information that Ukraine and Poland are intending to establish some enterprise to produce some heavy military equipment. Are there any details about that? So in your first question, what exactly did you want to ask about? So the United States I will help you a bit. So in the previous briefing, I have given an example about the use of M777. There was indeed such a case. I truly believe that in the nearest briefing, I will be permitted to comment or to give other examples about the use of systems provided by our partners. Now, speaking about the collaboration with Poland, we probably cannot comment on this. Yes, we are not entitled to give such comments. So this is indeed something that Hanna is not responsible for, and so yet another question here.
Мікрофон, прошу вас, не
No,
чутно.
for political branch. I'm Andrea Romoli, journalist from RAI, National. For political branch. You, Deputy Minister. Because a political question, not military question. Okay. The pocket of defense in Donbas region, the Severodonetsk pocket of defense is now not more large, not more than 12 kilometers. Which means the question is, are you ready to retreat your soldier in order to prevent they will be surrounded by a Russian if the sacks will be closed?
Це політичне питання.
Військове питання. Чи
This actually is a military question. So are our troops ready to withdraw in order to avoid the situation of encirclement in Donbas region? Yeah. Yes, the enemy intends to encircle our troops, but I wouldn't define this in such critical terms. The military are ready for any developments on the battlefield, but all the actions taken by the service people and the units are intended to accomplish a certain goal, a certain vision. Right now, we do not have in the vision of the general staff for our troops to withdraw from the territories you were mentioning. As of now, there is indeed threat. The enemy is indeed trying to do that, but right now we don't see the needs to withdraw. Thank you. Thank you for finding time for joining us and for sharing this information. Thank you so much, and see each other at the next meetings.